Hi.
Hello there.
The twang of a bowstring, the cessation of a once beating heart. I knelt down quietly beside my prey and confirmed the absence of a pulse. There's no escaping the cold, ironclad law of this world, that the strong devour the weak to survive. Growing up in a backwater hunting village, the adults ingrained this irrefutable rule into our brains from the moment we could crawl. Memories of my childhood raced into my head as I wrestled the arrow from flesh and sinew. Back then, my friend and I would often trek into the perilous wilderness to compete for the largest catch. Although no records of our matches were ever kept, I can assure you that I never lost once. I had the sharpest eyes in the entire village, bar none. When I stood atop a mountain summit, not a single beast escaped my gaze. Yep, I sure was proud of my eyesight when I was a kid. Everyone in the village showered me with praise. They all agreed I was a natural-born hunter, a generational talent even. Now, I'm not going to lie. I might have let it go to my head a little. Before I realized it, my bonds with the villagers began to fray. My world, the village, felt suffocating. I took to hunting on my own as a means of improving my survival skills, to learn to be self-sufficient. Before long, I left the village behind. As someone who could pinpoint a pin in a sea of silver, the ends of the skies remained opaque to me. Oh, how I desired to know what lay beyond the shroud. I wanted to be able to see halfway around the world from where I stood. Was that so weird? Striding into my first real city was a moment unlike any other. Where did all the people come from? While my mouth feasted on savory delights, my eyes took in the vivid sights. Like a pup opening her eyes for the first time, I was flooded with wonder. What a mess of nerves and excitement I must have been. For the better part of a week, I worked tirelessly to blend in with the crowd. Couldn't let anyone find out I was a country bumpkin. The transition was seamless. I even established quite a few friendships. Life in the city was a delight, until reality finally caught up to me. One day, a colossal beast broke past the city gates. In an instant, I fired my bow with the goal of taking one life to save many. With nary a twitch, the interloper went down in a silent heap. I thought time had stopped. None dared breathe, let alone speak. Suddenly, the entire square erupted with cheers and applause. For the first time since my arrival, I wasn't simply another face in the crowd. Riding the high, I instinctively went about field dressing the kill, right in front of everyone. Can you blame me? Its meat and hide would have made such fabulous gifts for the city folk. Oh, I was so naive back then. You can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl. The warm reception I had won turned absolutely frosty. From the moment I made the first incision, I realized my faux pas, but it was already too late. Friends with whom I'd stayed up many a night swapping stories over food and drink instantly severed ties with me and began to gossip behind my back. In the blink of an eye, I'd lost everything. That was the day I received my first bitter taste of isolation. It's hard to identify exactly when the cynicism set in, when I started to view myself as a monster. Things are so much simpler when you're a kid. I was happy as the village's top archer, and that was that. Then I stepped outside my little bubble and was never the same again. From the new locales I visited to the strange beasts I shot down, every new experience filled me with ever-growing doubt. I questioned if there was anyone in the Sky Realm capable of matching my marksmanship. I was still proud of my hunting prowess, but the prospect of standing alone at the top left me feeling conflicted. When you're the best of the best with zero competition, who else can you relate to? The thought of total isolation terrified me the most. At times, my yearning for camaraderie bordered on the obsessive. It wasn't like I had to find a rival who was my equal in skill. I just wanted to meet someone who saw me for who I was. There had to be at least one person out there I could confide in, share my secrets with. Sadly, most folks I met on my travels took one look at my freak talents and refused to give me the time of day. Some were kind enough to at least pretend to like me. We'd spend time together, sharing pleasantries and laughs. I nearly fell into the trap of believing I was normal, until the fear hiding in their eyes betrayed the truth. These people stared back at me like cornered animals fearing a predator who was merely playing with her food. I began to blame myself, and grew too afraid to even give them a passing hello. Then, I finally met someone who genuinely understood what I was going through. Her name was Silva. She was a master sniper in her own right, and didn't give two hoots that I wasn't normal. We did everything as best friends. Eating out, shopping, the works. Whew, the bags of rubies I must have spent. Now, I'd been burned before, but this time things were going to be different. When will I learn not to get my hopes up? You see, Silva was hired for this routine bodyguard gig. Nothing fancy. But it all fell apart when suddenly her VIP came under attack from a horde of monsters. I saw the ambush unfold from leagues away, and without a second thought drew back my bowstring again and again. As the last of the brutes fell from my arrows, Silva stood trembling amid the carnage, her mouth agape. "She's a monster," my supposed friend uttered. Of course, I couldn't hear her words over such a vast distance, but I read it on her lips, clear as day. I'd been called that countless times by countless people. The words should have held no power over me, but this time it had hit differently, coming from someone I considered to be my first best friend. From that day on, we pretty much drifted apart. But I guess fate had other plans for us. When I joined the captain on their travels, I was shocked to learn that the woman I'd been trying so hard to avoid was also part of the crew. Silva and I finally sat down and had a heart-to-heart to clear the air. And wouldn't you know it, both of us were guilty of misjudging the other, and of acting like babies. Silva apologized for what she had said on that fateful day, even though it was totally my fault for jumping to conclusions. Hearing my first real friend speak from the heart brought me to tears. I think it was at that point when I realized I wasn't alone anymore. There was someone else standing right beside me, someone I could rely on through thick and thin. The monster who had been sentenced to a life of isolation was at long last free of her prison. There are 10 of us that make up the Eternals. We're said to be the strongest fighters wielding the strongest weapons in the skies. Our formidable presence alone was enough to deter conflict before it arose, so rarely did I need to draw an arrow. I joined the Eternals because I agreed with their mantra of solving disputes without bloodshed. But on a personal level, I just wanted to spend time with others who knew the pain of being ostracized for being atypical. So imagine my dismay when I discovered their penchants for being antisocial. We don't even go out for dinner together. What's up with that? Well, everyone's got their own thing going, I guess. But it's a shame we don't indulge in our hobbies together. Not all hope is lost, though. A lot of us have really opened up since we started traveling with the captain's crew. Speaking of the crew, I wonder how they're doing right now. Last time I saw them was before they left for Zega Grande Skydom. And according to the latest gossip from Onra's merchant contacts, the region was experiencing a massive uprising. When Sovan heard the news, of course he leapt into action and headed there himself. Sovan's a principled man, but sometimes he can be blinded by zeal. Like the time the Seven-Star Sword manipulated him into attacking his fellow Eternals. Yep, including me. So, I thought I should go and keep an eye on him. It wasn't that I was worried about him, per se. Better to have extra help on hand should complications develop, you know? Besides, I was doing this as a favor to Onra, too. And as long as I was making excuses, I might as well confess. Although I never miss my target, I certainly missed the captain and the crew. Upon my arrival in Zega Grande, the crew introduced me to Id, one of their newest acquaintances. He'd been at the eye of the storm, and it wasn't hard to see he was talented. He was equally as strong as the captain. No, perhaps he had a higher ceiling. Sovan gave a big smile as he shook hands with Id, but I felt the crackle of tension in the air. Meanwhile, Id struck me as a troubled youth. Something about his mannerisms led me to believe that he too had suffered unfairly because of his power. He would have fit right in as the 11th member of the Eternals. Would it be alright if I lent a hand with your handyman tasks? Now that I was here, I decided to make myself useful. Maybe then I'd gain more insight into Id's constant self-reproach, learn the meaning behind those words he so often spoke.
I must atone for the crimes I've committed.
As the story went, the Church of Avia sought to throw this Skydom into chaos, and Id had served as one of its generals. Yet as far as I could tell, the people of Folca seemed to have already forgiven him, and were treating him as one of their own. This swordsman had made sacrifices for the well-being of others, and he appeared determined to continue doing so. I couldn't imagine anyone accusing him for not atoning enough. But in fact, there was one person capable of it. Id himself. When I heard about the dragon power that had been sealed in his body, I felt a cold chill go through my own, a fear and uncertainty. For him, it's a burden he'll have to bear for the rest of his life. One day, Sovan and Id were called away on an emergency mission to exterminate monsters. After Sovan came back, he didn't look happy.
His power is a ticking time bomb. You want to live with endless guilt after he goes off? 'Cause I don't.
Whatever threat he saw in Id seemed to have rattled him. I didn't want to dismiss Sovan's misgivings outright, but the captain was a good judge of character. We needed to take our time getting to know Id. I'm going to withhold judgment and trust what my eyes show me. Suddenly, Sovan motioned for me to zip it. His eyes darted from side to side. Then he left without a word. How odd. Had someone been eavesdropping on us? At any rate, I had to step up my surveillance on Id. And what better way to stick close to Id without raising suspicion than by joining the Fix-It team? Now, when Id said he did everything, he was not exaggerating. I giggled at the thought of the stone-faced bruiser tackling some of these jobs. Monster slaying? Of course. Finding a missing dog? I could see him doing that. Dishing out love advice? Oh, to be a fly on that wall. Helping the townspeople was a welcome break from the family Zothba's incessant interviews. To think the Eternal's exploits have made it this far west. Anra and Sovan sure know how to leverage our brand. As Zothba likes to say, business is business. I shared info about the Eternals. He gave me the scoop on it. Turns out, his home on Dolly Island was destroyed in a catastrophe 15 years ago. In the aftermath, he found himself adopted by the church, along with other foster brothers and sisters. Knowing that he hadn't grown up alone was of some relief to me, though I couldn't exactly tell you why. Regardless, I kept hacking away at the ever-expanding list of errands demanded of a handyman. One day, Id set out on an emergency request, and this time I followed. We'd come to Dolly, his old stomping grounds. From my vantage point in the air, I scanned the vast, sweeping desert with my monstrous eyes until I spotted our client amid a gaggle of fiends. Id, move to your 9! Hurry! My partner charged forward while I secured the rear. I'm saved! That was a little too close. As I tried to calm the shaking woman, I noticed a haphazard trail of loose boxes and cartons leading away from us, no doubt created during her desperate attempt to flee. I'll go collect your cargo. Id, will you stay here and... I was turning to look his way just as he cleaved a monster leaping out of the sand. He simply nodded back. I think I was becoming a fan. Alrighty then. Time for this archer to wrap things up with a great big bow. My associate Id will keep you safe while I collect your stuff. Be right back. Okay. Thank you.
Go on. I got this.
Watch it, Twain! Big fat move!
These pups are in for a rough time. Let's start with the first piece. Alrighty, on to number 2.
Snake's alive! It's alive!
I would just like this one is history. I sure hope nothing's happened to our merchant while we were gone.
I wouldn't worry too much about that. She's got the best bodyguard around. Look up! Look up! They're above you!
Not to worry. I'll take them all out in one foul swoop. What's this? As the saying goes, birds of a feather die together.
Uh-huh.
Might be useful. Now for the third. Over here! Think that's everything.
Sweet! Let's head back!
Ambush! Get away, you fiend!
Help me!
Come on! Covering! I see everything you do!
Nothing like having your own hand to hold the fort!
Between the eyes! I've got you now!
They just keep coming! Or we'll show them who's boss!
Picture the arrow. Center your breathing.
Here's a gift! Rain from above!
Income.
Here's that! Valiant leap! Between the eyes!
Your fate was sealed from the...
You're done!
Over here! Center your breathing.
You're done! Between the eyes!
Over here!
Wipe them out! Clincher!
You tricked me! You're a monster in sheep's clothing!
Wow! Not cool, lady! Just busting out all the stops to protect
These eyes have never failed me.
my crew! Wha-bam! Down for the count!
It looks all clear to me. I'm not seeing any more foes.
Thank goodness.
Are you sure that guy's on the level? You saw him turn into that monster too, didn't you?
There was that word again. It's all right. You've nothing to worry about. We'd slain every last enemy and secured the woman's safety, but that did nothing to soothe her nerves. I caught Id's gaze for the briefest instant before he quickly looked away. He's not your enemy, he's a friend. He used his power in order to keep you safe. It was no use. Prejudice had already clogged her ears.
Sorry.
With a subdued apology, Id turned on his heel and headed for the ship. This likely wasn't the first time he'd experienced persecution, nor would it be the last. Once Id left the scene, the client seemed to snap out of her hysteria.
I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me.
I felt compelled to say something, but my mind drew a blank. The woman opened her mouth to speak, though nothing came out. In the end, she simply kept her eyes glued to the spot where it had stood. Change wasn't going to happen overnight, but I chose to be optimistic.
Yes, can I help you?
As we pulled into Fulka, I saw a throng of people lined up along the dock awaiting Id's return. Some jumped up and down while others in the crowd, though I'm not sure why. Unlike Id, they weren't afraid of expressing their emotions. The man of the hour himself was taken aback by the hero's welcome. Nevertheless, I saw a sliver of a smile creep across his face. He'd touched the hearts of many serving as Fulka's handyman. Not a single one of the grateful residents saw him as a monster. Having had the pleasure of working with Id, I was able to draw several conclusions. He wasn't big on words, and when he did speak, it was short and to the point. Yet he never brandished his attitude with the intention of causing harm. I sensed no bitter embers of resentment smoldering within him. Nor did I sense a deep-seated grudge for the hand he was dealt. His positive reputation stood as a testament to his unwavering resolve. Be that as it may, Sovan was correct in treating Id's destructive power as a threat. People who didn't know him would easily mistake his power as a tool for evil, and that's before it had even reached its fullest potential. Right. The job to ensure that the world remains at peace. keep the client safe, I hadn't had the chance to soak in the scenery. Broken structures from the disaster 15 years ago lay half buried amid the ruins, like sunken ships in a sea of sand. I spotted a rusted seesaw, forced to retire from ever lifting another gleeful passenger. A sigh escaped my lips. After cresting a dune, I came to a stop and reflected on my own mission. How was I supposed to handle id from the perspective of the Eternals? Was I to judge this man so beloved by his community simply because he harbored the potential for catastrophe? I was so lost in thought that I didn't realize I wasn't alone anymore.
This used to be my neighborhood.
What was he holding? Flowers?
Oh. These.
Turns out he made frequent trips to Dolly to pay respect to the fallen.
Lilith found me here. My real parents were probably... already...
He looked down at his feet as he continued.
This wasteland is Versa's legacy. The dragon that was sealed within me. And now his power and I are inseparable.
Id himself wasn't to blame for the catastrophe. That much I knew for certain. But with such devastation quietly resting within him, it was hard to let things slide. Not to mention, he did have a record of going berserk before joining the crew. Power and responsibility go hand in hand. I had to make a decision soon. There's nothing inherently wrong about wanting to get stronger. But when you're blasting away entire villages with the snap of a finger, that's where I draw the line. In the beginning, I saw a bit of myself in it. People shunned my extreme abilities, and I retreated into my shell because of it. He, however, had a strong support system in place to prop him up. It hurts to admit that I was once beguiled by my own weapon, the two-crown bow. Id, as he is right now, wouldn't have fallen for that trickery. Still, I had to be sure. Hey, mind if I ask you something? Let's say you were facing down the ultimate villain, and the only way to win was to lose yourself to the dragon's power. Would you take that chance?
If that's what it takes to save lives, then yeah. I'd use that power in a heartbeat.
So he was ready to put his life on the line for others. Good to know. After a short pause, he added a caveat.
Because even if worst comes to worst, I know the captain will knock me on my ass if I screw up.
With that, he stared off into the desert sky, which seemed to stretch into eternity. I couldn't help but smile. Winning people over when you're on an entirely different playing field is no easy feat. Believe me, I know. He'll tolerate the jeers, the scorn, and the acrimony, but he'll never tolerate his failure to help others. It was finally clear what I had to do. Upon my return to Seed Hollow, a member of the family Zothba dropped off a letter for me, and I wasted no time in reading it. I could feel the author's disdain in every word.
I hereby challenge Twain of the Eternals to a duel. You can't hide your plot against it from me! Meet me at Seed Hollow Castle, now. Former commander of the Silver Wolf Corps, Galanza.
Okay? Not sure who this Galanza person was, but we both knew it, apparently. I smelled a trap. On the other hand, if it was involved in some way, then I had no choice but to investigate. When I arrived at the castle, a domineering draft motioned me over.
Well, well. You must be Twain,
As soon as I gave him a curt nod, he leveled his spear at me. He was definitely the mysterious author of that letter.
I knew you wouldn't leave me hanging!
He roared with laughter, eyes fixed on me like daggers. You mentioned a plot against id. Would you care to elaborate? Suddenly, the man wasn't laughing anymore. He accused the Eternals of plotting to assassinate id, whom he saw as a younger brother. So Sovan's instincts had been right. There had been someone eavesdropping on our conversation. Now that I think about it, that was around the time the family Zathma started peppering me with questions. We should have been more careful before speaking so candidly. Still, the discussion to eliminate id had occurred before we had all the facts. I needed to clear this up. This is all a misunderstanding. Galanza snorted and readied his weapon. Anything I had to say would be a waste of breath. I knew the type. Too proud to admit wrongdoing. The only language they understood was combat. All right, Buster. Your funeral.
Step on up! It's time for the death match of your lives! You better bring it!
Don't expect me to go easy on you.
Nobody paints a target on his head and gets away with it!
I see everything
You
you
get
did.
it yours! Don't bring your trash into my kind of Eternal! You have to fight! The Eternals don't disappoint!
For someone in such hot water, you don't seem to feel the heat at all. Center your breathing.
It's over! Valiant breathe!
Beat it!
Rain from above! Let's see, run!
We're through! Storming death!
You can't be. Have you considered surrendering?
Nice try! Wasn't that to bring me?
Confound it all! I take no pleasure in watching us beat down from the sidelines! Is this a waltz of warriors? On guard!
Who invited you?
You're
I'll
done.
erase you later.
Even
Focus on the monster before us!
Ooh, another runner has entered the fray.
Hey, it's nothing compared to his suffering!
A wounded beast is there. Picture it.
Lucy!
Center your breathing.
I shall carry the torch.
Picture the arrow. Center your breathing. Then let's be extra careful. Income. My crew.
You Eternals are tough. Can't believe you're pushing us into a corner.
This hunter never fails to catch her prey.
Weapons of yore. To battle. By storm. Feel no Let's see, run! I got you now! This cannot be! I refuse.
Goodness. That ranks as one of my top 5 hardest fights. The two mysterious attackers were on the ropes, but they hadn't lost their spirit.
It's gonna mop the floor with you. You should have brought every Eternal with you if you wanted to stand a chance!
I'd sleep better if we could have at least taken one of them out.
It wasn't the loss itself they lamented, but rather their inability to protect someone important to them. I was relieved to know they weren't bad people. So I did the only thing I could think of to diffuse the tension. I smiled. As I was trying to say before, this is a big misunderstanding. I'm on your side, and I intend to stand up for it. Once they realized I wasn't going to take their heads, they finally decided to believe me. There was only one hurdle left in Id's way, and its name was Sovan.
Come to view the requests?
I tracked down the captain in Seed Hollow and gave them the rundown. Perhaps uncoincidentally, Sovan and Id were both missing. Visions of a bloodbath flooded my mind, and I admonished my overactive imagination. We had to find those two before grave mistakes were made, ones that could never be corrected. Unfortunately for us, Sovan did a stellar job of covering his tracks. His precautions proved that this time, he meant business. What we needed was a clue. Oh. There was an entire business devoted to gathering intel right here in Seed Hollow. How could I forget? They were the ones who facilitated the castle duel in the first place. I figured I was owed a favor for having to deal with that inconvenience. The captain and I entered Zothba's tavern right as an informant returning from Folka was reporting on the whereabouts of our missing boys. The family still held open distrust for the Eternals, but as always, the captain put in a good word for me. We rushed to Einstedo Archipelago. What would have taken dozens of spotters hours to comb the chain of islands, I surveyed in seconds. There they were, in Skyworm Valley! Hard to miss the flash of sparks erupting off of clashing steel. That's enough! I fired an arrow that landed squarely between the two, stopping them in their tracks. The surprise on Sovan's face dissipated in a split second. He knew the jig was up. Sovan didn't know it, nor had I felt the need to tell him, but Anra gave me special instructions before coming to Sega Grande. If our leader decided to take matters into his own hands, the duty to stop him fell to me.
There's little Sovan can't fix, given how strong he is. I fully expect him to try and solve everything by himself.
Now that's weird. No one consulted me about dragging it out into the wilderness to murder him. Don't get me wrong, Sovan. I know the responsibility of keeping the world safe is a heavy one. I should have done more to talk things out with you, so we could come up with a solution that would please everybody. But as the saying goes, all's well that ends well. Maybe now we can finally set aside our differences and have an honest chat over a warm meal.
Gosh, thanks for taking the time to come talk to me. I was kinda hoping to make an apology to Id today.
The same woman who had been terrified of her savior had hired me to give her advice. Imagine that. Me, a counselor. If I ever got tired of the Eternals gig, I think I'd make a great Miss Fix-It. Case in point, my master plan was about to come to fruition.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
What? What's he doing here?
An awkward silence followed as the woman looked at me, pleading for a lifeline. Nope, you're on your own. But I did give her an encouraging smile. Got plenty of those. Realizing my lips were sealed, the woman timidly faced Id. She gathered her courage and spoke from the heart. She expressed regret for the abuses she had hurled at her rescuer.
She'd been trying to find the nerve to apologize ever since. Little by little, she laid bare her true feelings.
I'm mortified by my appalling behavior. Please accept my heartfelt apologies. The next time I need a bodyguard, the job's all yours. I won't hire anyone but you.
The sudden change in the woman's demeanor was as evident as the surprise on Id's face.
Sure. Thanks.
Oh, was that a hint of pink I saw in his cheeks? Well, I was an archery expert, not a people expert. I never knew what to say at times like these. It's interesting how the little things can spur big changes in our relationships with others. Watching new bonds form in real time was a treat. Sometimes, all it takes for two hearts to beat in harmony is the twang of a bowstring.
Twain, can you see into the future?
Who's to say? Personally, I'd say he hit the bullseye.
There's something about the pure blue sky that pierces the soul. Whenever I glimpsed its light, I felt my spirits lifted upward into the resplendent glow. But when I tried to reach out and capture its brilliance, I would find myself empty-handed. I knew I was a fool for believing I could touch it, but I would give anything to be in its presence, bathed in its warmth, just once more. How I detested that radiance, a light I shunned, rejected, and despised, and above all, yearned for. Is it irrational to both loathe and cherish something? My emotions had been in disarray, driving me towards madness. But to understand what led to that incongruity, I need to start from the beginning. Fate was set in motion roughly 2,000 years ago, when the astral Lucilius created assistants to aid his research into Sky Dweller evolution. They were the original primal beasts, though they went by a different name, Archangels. Given that we primals are immortal, the role which we are bestowed becomes our sole purpose for existing. Yet, when I was created, Supreme Primarch Lucifer saw fit to grant me nothing. I was essentially a blank slate, little more than the hollow husk of a primal. With unwavering determination, I stalked the garden of the Astral Research Lab, waiting for my chance to question Lucifer. What was my purpose in life? Only he had the answer I desperately sought. With each passing moment, the whirling tempest of inferiority and doubt within my mind grew fiercer. As my disillusionment deepened, I came to view the Supreme Primarch as my only salvation. His wisdom, his skill, and even his poise. Everything about him was sublime. It was only fitting that he was beloved by all. I was convinced there was no other being as perfect as him. Indeed, he was the light that illuminated the world. And thus, I endeavored to prove that I could be of use to him. The only way I could pull my weight was to secure a role for myself. It became an obsession. I was but a tender hatchling, pestering its parent for nourishment. If only I had been more careful of what I wished for. One day, I finally learned the truth of my purpose, and it destroyed me. I wouldn't go so far to say I was eavesdropping, more like I happened to be within earshot of a conversation between Lucilius and Lucifer. From this innocuous meeting, my entire world changed forever. A spare. I was Lucifer's spare. A temporary stand-in for the supreme definition of perfection like Lucifer. A spare becomes redundant. Not only was I born a backup, I was a useless one. My dreams were built on hope, respect, and admiration. Yet, it wasn't until everything came crashing down that I realized how flimsy that foundation had been. In one brief flash, I came to hate the light. Much time passed after that shocking revelation, though little of note occurred. Later, however, a faction of the Archangels rose up in rebellion against the Astrals. They were the fallen angels, primals who believed themselves to be at the top of the food chain, radicals who snapped at the hands of their creators. Their mission was to shake up the hierarchy. Lost in rage from being tossed aside like a broken doll, I joined the rebellion without hesitation. It was my chance to claim revenge on Lucifer and Lucilius. No, just Lucifer. But the revolt was quashed, and I, along with the fallen angels, was imprisoned in Pandemonium. I languished in that colossal cage for 2 millennia, an eternity, even for a being with all the time in the world. Yet, as chance would have it, when Vern and Lyria came in contact with each other for the first time, a deafening roar reverberated across the skies, signaling the opportunity for me to escape. Luck was on my side. But when I emerged back into the open skies, Lucifer was nowhere to be found. I wanted to be berated. I yearned to be scolded. But above all else, I needed acknowledgement. And I wouldn't rest until I got what I deserved. If I needed to light the world ablaze just to smoke him out, so be it. I destroyed the equilibrium between the tetra elements, fire, water, earth, and wind. Deprived of that delicate balance, the islands would lose buoyancy and crash into the crimson horizon below. My lips twisted into a grin as I watched the Primarchs scramble to put out my fires. Wiping out the world wasn't even that hard. I had barely broken a sweat. I shed no tears for the ruin of the skies. My focus was exhausted, suffocated by the stranglehold Lucifer kept on my heart. Darkness had conquered my judgment to the point where not even his light could mollify me. But that was what I wanted. What possessed me to commit such atrocities? Why did I lash out with such rancor? I asked rhetorically. I already knew the answers. I didn't care if I became a villain. All I cared about was proving my existence. Nothing was going to stop me. Come what may, I was going to force his hand.
Come again. Welcome! Wonder what kind of sigil we'll see today. Unbelievable! Vouchers? We'll transmute! Now here's we have a wide selection of sigils! want to save a few cents. Don't be a stranger. Yes, can I help you?
I chose to believe there was a method to my madness. To be punished for my crimes would validate my birth. Leaving behind a wake of destruction was my way of crying out for attention. No matter how foolish an act it was, nothing could have stopped me. There was only one way to soothe my tortured soul. All I needed was for one person to admit that I mattered, to tell me I belonged in this world. In the end, it was the captain and crew who thwarted my realm-raising intentions. My plan to sow havoc and turmoil in the skies by releasing the fallen angels from Pandemonium never stood a chance. Perhaps I should have seen my failure coming. Nothing got past Lucifer. His stringent vigil over Pandemonium prevented the sky's impending doom. He appeared before me in my time of defeat. Every pent-up emotion inside of me, excess baggage accumulated over the past 2,000 years, erupted all at once. Grief from feeling worthless, misery from being ignored, despair from everlasting rejection. Everything that had transpired was his fault. Hate me, destroy me, punish me, I begged. But Lucifer did not see fit to play my game. Instead, he accepted full responsibility for my crimes. No, it wasn't supposed to end that way. I wasn't interested in clemency. I sought to beget calamity in order to be struck down by the Supreme Primarch's own hand. Were he to forgive my transgressions, my hatred for the light over these past centuries would have been for naught. To my dismay, the punishment I desired never came. Lucifer sealed me within the gentle warmth of his core, where I succumbed to a deep sleep. I found myself in a place where time ceased to flow. It was the perfect cloister, where I had nothing but my thoughts to keep me company. Then one day, Lyria came to see me. She fought to make me see reason, drawing examples from her own life experiences. The girl spoke of grappling with personal inadequacies. She hadn't known what her purpose in life was, or even who she was. But despite those hurdles, she eventually found a place to call home. Likewise, she believed it wasn't too late for me to discover my true self. Could Lucifer and I actually come to understand one another someday? It was a tempting thought, one that caused cracks to form in my rigid facade. Perhaps I had misunderstood Lucifer all along. The stronger the light, the darker the shadow. When one is faced with such dazzling brightness, the only escape is to look away. Could it be that I was being bathed in his light all this time? The walls of my confines melted away, and I was transported to a shrine in Canaan. I could feel Lucifer's presence close by. Faint though it was, I followed his aura until I finally found him. Or at least, what was left of him. His head lay on the ground, devoid of a vessel to bear it. Despite the loss of his senses, he seemed to comprehend that someone was present.
Please. I have a message for the ears of one named Sandalphon. I leave my power and the position of Supreme Primarch to him.
Even in his dismembered state, his mind lingered on the Sky Realm. It's no wonder he irritated me so. He always did as he pleased. Consequences to others be damned. The skies! All you ever talk about is this worthless realm! I went off on a tirade, though I don't know how much of it got through to him, given his state. His last words took a turn toward the philosophical.
What makes the sky blue? For thousands of years, people have wondered. And even once they grasped the science, they continued to ask. It struck me. Perhaps a question is really just a wish. Wondering why, how, what to do. That eternal questioning, wishing, seems to be where evolution leads.
As he drew his final breath, he spoke not as the Supreme Primarch, but as himself.
If I could be granted one last wish, I'd like to share one more cup of coffee with you.
Power, along with his wishes, being passed on to me. All I could do was stand there in a stupor. I peered out of the shrine and gazed at the expansive blue he loved so much. His calming light would forever shine across the skies, illuminating the path forward, an undying beacon to guide those who lost their way. Disaster never seems to sleep. Not long after I had inherited Lucifer's power, another crisis threatened the world. This time it was Lucilius who took offense to the gods, unleashing chaos to spit in their faces. His plan, or grand finale in his words, was to crash Pandemonium into the Crimson Horizon, thereby destroying the dimensional barrier. To make matters worse, the Astral had the gall to attach his head to Lucifer's stolen body. It fueled him with immense power in the form of 12 pitch-black wings on his back. It was my duty to uphold the Supreme Primarch's legacy and protect the realm. I teamed up with the captain and crew to stop Lucilius dead in his tracks. I had finally found friends I wanted to protect. The fate of an entire world rested on my shoulders. This mission was personal. It wasn't so much about keeping promises or seeking atonement, nor was it to fulfill my duty as the Supreme Primarch. I simply wished to safeguard those I held dear. By some miracle, I had become the light that could banish evil. Lyria kept a white plume with her, perhaps as a good luck charm, without knowing what it truly represented. The plume resonated with me, and from my back grew 12 great wings. 2 were my own, followed by 6 bestowed by the Supreme Primarch. The other Primarchs contributed the final 4, 1 from each respective owner. With the weight of everyone's faith borne upon my wings, we defeated Lucilius, the Skyrealm's greatest threat, once and for all. A saga spanning 2 millennia had at last come to an end. It wasn't until some days later, as I stood on the deck of the soaring Grand Cipher, that I would have the chance to reflect on the immediate aftermath of our duel with Lucilius. After the Astral's downfall, a dimensional rift opened and began pulling Lyria in. I remembered the wind roaring in my ears as I flew to rescue her. The next thing I knew, I awoke in a place without time. I seemed to have returned back to the garden at the research lab, or some sort of recreation of it at least. A figure walked up to me and reached out a hand. It was Lucifer. Was I dreaming? Was this merely an illusion? We sat in the serene garden, sipping coffee and waxing nostalgic about events that took place 20-odd centuries ago. I couldn't stop my thoughts from spilling out. There were so many things to apologize for, so much gratitude to be expressed. And that's not to mention the myriad questions I felt compelled to ask. I reiterated my commitment to act as the new Supreme Primarch. And before long, the moment of our parting had arrived. In the past, I always had to watch him leave. But now, it was his turn to see me off. I had to be strong, for his sake. It was time to bid farewell to the eternal light of my adoration. I put forth my best smile. Till next time. The Grand Cipher, its crew, and the endless blue skies. I never would have imagined myself posing for a painting against such a backdrop. But there I was, on the docks of Folca, standing beside my fellow models, Lyria, Vern, Id, and the captain. How did I get roped into this, you might be asking? Well, I can assure you I didn't volunteer. You see, it began a few days prior while I was perusing the wares of the Knick-Knack Shack. There, slightly hidden in the back, a painting had caught my eye. What drew my attention to the piece wasn't the scenic rendition of Folca, but rather the hue that stained the sky. It looked distorted. I felt compelled to ask the Creator about their intentions. With Sierra Carte acting as an intermediary, the artist agreed to field my questions. In exchange, I and a select few would have to pose for a new piece. According to Id, the latest of the crew's allies, modeling was well within the bounds of a handyman's duties. But, returning to the topic at hand, once the portrait session concluded, I asked her to elaborate on the meaning behind her choice of colors.
Well, I'm not sure if I can explain it without sounding insane. Every time I look at the skies these days, it sort of feels... blue? Like in the figurative sense, I mean.
In other words, she saw deterioration in the sky's health.
I don't know. I'm probably the only one who sees it that way. Maybe it's all in my head, but something doesn't sit right with me.
Such sharp perception. Perhaps this is what sky dwellers call artists' intuition. If the health of the sky is in actual decline, an examination of the wind element may help us locate any symptoms. Even the tiniest, most imperceptible change can balloon to catastrophic proportions. At worst, it could lead to the complete destabilization of the tetra elements. To ignore warning signs, no matter how trifling, was a recipe for disaster.
Wind element. Wind element. Oh, Purican might know something. Let me ask.
Lyria closed her eyes and beseeched the primal to appear. We waited, to no avail.
Huh? That's weird. Purican isn't responding to me.
According to Lyria, she'd spoken to the primal as little as a few days ago. Given the primal's newfound silence, it did seem as if something was wrong.
I don't like where this is going. I think this calls for a trip to the old mines.
The captain nodded in agreement.
As far as I'm aware, Tempeal's recovery has been trouble-free. Let's hope this is just a fluke.
The only way to know for certain was to see it for ourselves. We quickly boarded the Grand Cipher and departed for Tempeal to hunt for clues. Peace had barely returned to Zega Grande Skydom, and now chaos was already brewing once more. The knots in my stomach grew tighter by the minute.
All right, see you. Yeah?
Wait a second. like you.
Come to view the requests?
I'm not seeing anything out of the ordinary, to be honest with you.
The self-proclaimed handyman known as Roland had joined our investigation of Halewind Altar. Astral though he may be, he was a close ally of the crew. As a long-time denizen of Zega Grande, his knowledge of the Skydom was second to none. To think there existed an Astral who had laid his life on the line for the good of the realm. It was difficult to reconcile Roland's personality with my own biases, especially having witnessed Lucilius's sinister deeds.
Wait, there's something close by.
Allow me to amplify your energy, Lyria. Now, can you try calling Furykin again?
Sure. Here goes.
Once again, the primal of vitality failed to appear. It's becoming clear that the wind element is acting abnormally. It's more pronounced here than in Folka. Ever since the 4 Primarchs relinquished their oversight of the Tetra elements to nature, I've been able to utilize my Supreme Primarch powers to feel elemental currents. Yet I also sensed a faint foreign dissonance, one which was different from the irregularity in the wind element. Whatever it was, it seemed to be flowing towards a singular point elsewhere in the Skydom.
Hang on, I finally got through to Furykin. But something's not right.
A chill washed over my body, though it came and went in a flash. Judging from the look of panic on Lyria's face, the situation had taken a turn for the worse.
I was hoping I was wrong, but this aura can only mean one thing. Oh no, not this icky pressure again. I can't believe it's back!
That can't be. I thought we...
Here it comes!
A turbulent gale nearly launched us off our feet. Squinting through the howling wind, I saw the unmistakable silhouette of a primal beast rearing up on its hind legs. It appeared force was our only option. You give us no choice. We shall make you see reason.
Say it, I can't remind you still hold Furykin power.
I'm so sorry,
Not
Furykin. Even after we beat on Remind
Be gone!
you never completely went away.
We'll find a solution later. First, let us concentrate on subduing this beast.
Oh, Furykin, we're going to save you!
Here comes the big one!
Yes, steel yourself. You're through! We forced it to its knees. Strike with all your might. Not a chance! No escape! Thunder!
Here it comes!
Focus on evasion.
Everyone, come to me! Ward of life, on course!
Great job, Lyria. Furykin is changing its form. May have new tricks up its sleeve. Be ready for anything!
Finally, it shows its true face. Very well. Then I won't hold back either.
Listen to him, or else we're setting dust!
On wings of radiance. One more push and dignity still!
Okay, Lyria. Your turn.
Got it! I'm sorry for what you had to suffer through, Furikin, but everything's all right now.
Lyria's calming words soothed the primal. Now that Furikin was freed from its shackles, it dissipated quietly into the air, as did the projection of Angra Mainyu. We could only hope that we had seen the last of Furikin's fitful outbursts.
Lilith, you still haven't loosened your grip on this Skydom, have you?
The infamous Angra Mainyu was not what I had expected. Hearing about it was one thing. Being in its unsettling presence was something else entirely.
I still don't get it, though. Why'd old Gusty wait until now to start kicking up a storm? I mean, Furikin could have caused some serious damage already if it really wanted to.
I have my guesses. You see, during my old research days, we Astrals delved into the concept of emotional intelligence.
The primal beasts of Zega Grande formed pacts with the islands to serve as their guardians. It had been Roland who convinced the masses to worship these primals as primeval gods. Instilled with the people's faith, the primal's influence over the environment expanded significantly. Obvious treachery was responsible for Tempeal's misfortunes, resulting in a loss of faith in Furikin. As that confidence waned, it was only a matter of time before the primal beast went berserk.
With that being said, this change is too rapid. Furikin is consuming too much power.
Having lived in Zega Grande for so long, Roland knew an irregularity when he saw one. All we could posit for certain was that the stagnating faith in Furikin was weakening the wind element. Was it simply a case of lost confidence? I had a nagging suspicion there was more to the puzzle.
So if we don't restore that faith, things won't go back to the way they were.
Yes, that is the natural conclusion. I'm afraid swaying hearts will be easier said than done considering the damage Furikin has caused. But as they say, time heals all wounds.
Such optimism. Though his reasoning had merit, I did not believe we could leave fate in the hands of an old adage alone. May I interject?
What's wrong? You sound kinda serious.
As far as Zega Grande is concerned, Furikin is the next closest thing to the wind element itself. If Furikin's power drops, the wind element would consequently weaken. I needed to hammer home just how pressing this issue was. We find ourselves in a predicament where Zega Grande's islands are destined to fall out of the sky.
Wait, what?
You'd better start talking.
Gladly. However, the problem at hand requires a brief history lesson. And so, I recounted how the islands of Fanta Grande nearly fell into the Crimson Horizon. All because I had disrupted the equilibrium of the Tetra elements. Fire, water, earth, and wind. Island buoyancy is predicated on the delicate balance between those four. I was convinced this loss of buoyancy had made its way to Zega Grande, though I couldn't place the origin of the dissonance I felt. It was too faint and hard to trace, like trying to detect a grain of sand in the sea. The process could take as long as a century or as little as a year. Either way, it had begun. The clock was ticking.
A collapse of the balance between elements.
Furikin anymore. The wind is weakening, and someday the island will drop out of the sky?
More or less.
I can't sense the elements at all. How are we to rectify something we can't detect?
Maintaining the balance was paramount. A single loose thread could cause everything to rip at the seams. Restoring faith in the primal beasts, who represent their respective elements, should, in theory, stabilize the equilibrium. I presented my idea to Roland, and he agreed.
You make a sound point. Right then. Leave it to Mr. Fix-It. My experience with mending relationships shall not go to waste. I'll have a talk with everyone in Einstedo.
Roland had the trust of the townspeople, so the wind element was in capable hands. That left 3 elements unaccounted for.
Well, guess it's up to us to handle the rest. It'll be fun taking another tour of Zega Grande.
It always seems like we're heaping more and more troubles on your plate. I hope you don't mind?
Not at all. We'll make you proud.
You know what to do, Id. Let's show everyone what happens when Team Handyman steps up to the plate.
I'm on it.
With a strategy in place, we set off for the next island. A daunting task rested on our shoulders. We needed to rebuild the people's trust and faith. But I believed in the potential of Sky Dwellers, and I was finally a light who could guide them.
Yes, can I help you?
Our homes, our livelihoods, it's all gone. Gone!
We paid a visit to an old monastery on Lotanya Island. Rather than a warm welcome, we were greeted by a man stricken with grief. Try as I might, my questioning was met only with lament.
It is a pleasure to see you all again. Though I am loath to admit we cannot offer much in the way of hospitality at the moment.
Historiath, a woman who had played a vital role in bringing down Angra Mainyu, bowed to us with solemn grace.
You chose an inopportune time to visit. A section of permasnow inconceivably thawed, resulting in horrific flooding. We have our hands full with the evacuation efforts.
That explained the flock of distraught individuals milling about. Historiath and her attendants from Melo's monastery had done a remarkable job preventing casualties. A dramatic climate shift is certainly to blame for the unexpected thaw. However, the root cause was surely tied to a deviation of the water element. But there were more important things to worry about. For now, I brushed it aside in favor of helping the islanders.
This news doesn't appear to faze you. Is there perhaps something I should know?
I explained how faith in the primeval gods was connected to the state of the elements. The overseer closed her eyes, as if weighing the options available to her.
Does this mean we'll have to fight Managarmer?
That is ultimately not up to me. I would rather use force as a last resort, even though it seemed inevitable. Furiken's frenzied outburst could have been the exception, but perhaps that was just wishful thinking. These people were reaching their breaking points. To assault a god, a being meant to be revered, seemed counterproductive considering the state of morale.
Given that our esteemed primeval god governs sequestration, resealing it behind the doors of Tradam's sanctum may return some semblance of faith.
That could, in a manner of speaking, reset the island to its original state. A primeval god locked behind a door would elevate the divine being's mystique, thereby inspiring reverence amongst its worshippers. It was worth a try. Couldn't be any worse than allowing the climate shift to ravage the island.
O primeval god of Felfrost's dominion, by your grace, shut the gate of seclusion!
The sanctum doors shuddered and drew to a close. As they clicked shut, a wolf-like howl echoed from within the inner chambers. The evacuees raised their heads, soaking in the sonorous timbre with sighs of relief. To my surprise, the snowfall grew slightly heavier. I hadn't expected such a quick turnaround.
It seems Managarmer's divinity thrives when placed in seclusion.
The clouds over Lotania grew thicker and banished the sun's rays from its domain. Soon, the sacred mountain was back in the loving embrace of ice and frost. If the brutal cold is what its tenants cried out for, then who was I to judge?
Whenever I need inspiration to formulate a harebrained scheme, I just plunk myself down in front of this empty litter box and the ideas start flowing.
Zothba chuckled as we stared out at the ruins of Valian. The crew hid in the shade of a monolithic rock formation to avoid melting in the mid-afternoon sun. Even so, the heat was palpable to my more mortal companions.
Now I know what a fried egg feels like.
This island, like the previous two we'd come from, showed signs of irregularity. Desertification was accelerating, possibly spurred by an erratic earth element. I sensed the same lingering dissonance here, yet failed again to identify it. How irritating.
While we're holed up here trying to beat the heat, let me tell you a tale from Dolly's history.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Not so fast, Buster. What's this info gonna cost us?
Ha! Spoken like a true info broker. Ah, they grow up so fast. Anyway, we're pals now, aren't we? Not everything I do has an ulterior motive, you know.
I think that was the first time I'd seen Zothba smile since our introductions. He went on to explain that this entire region was occupied by an immense structure known as Holy City Valian, otherwise known as the primal beast Excavalian, and it was home to many a Skydweller. They were protected by the primal's power of fortification, and some say even astrals walked among them. Excavalian blessed the desert, harsh as it was. Every day the islanders gathered on a hill beneath the stars to offer up their prayers. It was hard to imagine this now barren land once teemed with activity.
Those prayers must have been what fueled that emotion mumbo-jumbo Roland was going on about. Excavalian stored up quite a bit of goodwill back in the day.
That changed when Roland sealed away Excavalian during the war, causing the islanders to seek prosperity elsewhere. They uprooted their families and took their faith in Excavalian with them. The final nail in the coffin was hammered in by the Church of Avia 15 years ago, when the Dali catastrophe wiped out any remaining souls. Even if such a disaster hadn't transpired, faith in Excavalian had hit its peak nearly 500 years earlier. How would it be possible to replicate those heights once more? Let's see what we have to work with. For one, there was sand. Lots of sand. As far as the eye could see. It was going to take a monumental, maybe even asinine, idea to repopulate this desolate island.
Huh. What? You think I sit behind a big desk just to stroke my ego? Point your peepers over there. Tell me if you spot the seeds of a burgeoning oasis.
I squinted at the dune Zothba was pointing to. A figure crested its peak, looking like a tree growing out of the sand. Another one sprouted, and then another, and soon an entire forest had emerged from the beige sea.
Ladies and gentlemen, who's got what it takes to be a millionaire? There's treasure everywhere you look, but only the quickest get stinking rich. Finders keepers, losers weepers. Are you ready? Get set, go!
On the spunky Harvin's signal, the crowd dispersed in all directions as if their lives depended on it.
We already picked the place clean of the good stuff, but they don't have to know that. Nothing mobilizes people better than get-rich-quick schemes. Besides, there's no rule against converting greed into faith, right?
So this was the man's grand design, a treasure-hunting venture. If word of riches reached gullible ears, a base of operations could easily grow into a true village.
Our cut is 30%. Don't worry. We already hammered out a deal with Seed Hollow. Pretty good side hustle, if you ask me.
Regardless of wealth's powerful allure, success was not guaranteed, nor would it come on such short notice. Still, it was a plan at least. We would have to wait until enough people settled on Dolly before determining the next step.
Yo, boss, I did it! My sales numbers are through the roof! That means I got that bonus on lockdown, right? Right?
Since when have I ever gone back on my word? Don't go spending it all in one place. And be sure to thank the primeval god. You hear?
I love ya, Excavalion! I'll buy a round in your honor.
Sometimes to get results, one needs to be unconventional, especially if it speeds the process along. This gambit just may prove to be more successful than anticipated. Zothba the information broker. He could give the Archangel of Cunning a run for his money. I did not think it possible to exceed Dolly's heat until I arrived on Fondom. Given that the fire element influences Fright Flame Altar, I should have known better. My throat burned with every spoken word. Even here, the fire element is fraying. The dissonance was present on this island too, its true identity still elusive as ever.
When I was trapped in Vulcan Bola's crystal, I could almost make out its intentions. It wasn't always the primal beast of dread. It was originally supposed to bring hope to people.
Lyria had been shown an ancient memory, one in which Vulcan Bola originally presided over Dolly and took shape based on the Put differently, Vulcan Bola was a primal that materialized from the collective unconsciousness of its worshippers.
It was supposed to gather everyone's hope. But
She couldn't bring herself to finish her thought. But her frown and downcast eyes said all that needed to be said. When those former dwellers of Dolly were confronted with the unknown, they had reacted not with hope, but with dread. Fear is a natural part of life. It allows a creature to avoid danger and survive to the next day. Mortals are generally rational beings, but it can be hard not to succumb to raw instinct. Whatever objective the Astrals aspired to achieve, it was incompatible with the wishes of Skydwellers. On account of the endless dread harbored within its body, Vulcan Bola gradually transformed into the earth-scorching being it is today.
the Astrals saw that things weren't going well. After Vulcan Bola damaged part of the island, they closed it off. Now it's called Fondom.
Without the guardianship of a primal beast, Dolly's lands began to wither, while the volcanic domain of Fondom languished in neglect. As long as Vulcan Bola maintained its power of dread, this exiled land would never see change. No one could be expected to live a life of constant fear. We would be hard-pressed to find any person sane enough to dwell in what I can only describe as a blistering death trap.
So you got a plan for fixing up the fire element, right? Because I do not want to fall out of the sky.
Yes, If the current situation were left to fester, then the sky would be well on its way to collapse. Though who would put their faith in dread? We were at an impasse.
Oh, there you are. Goodness, you folks sure don't miss your cardio. I'm glad I found you.
Fix it, dude! What are you doing here?
As Roland jogged over to us, robes flapping, I realized he had two unfamiliar faces in tow.
Zathba told me I'd find you here. I'm happy to announce that we're all set in Folka.
Roland told us the whole story, and we want to do our part to save these skies.
You've done so much for us, and we've repaid so little of your kindness. As representatives of Seed Hollow, we're here to offer our full assistance.
Roland had held a forum with the peoples of Folka and Seed Hollow. After much deliberation, they decided to
better.
In addition to monitoring the Primal, the observatory would become the destination for regular pilgrimages. The prayers offered would, hopefully, rehabilitate Volkenbola's image over time.
We were humbled by your efforts to protect our homes, so we knew we had to step it up too.
Our resources are your resources. Whatever happens, rest assured our forces will defend the citizens with their lives.
It was evident that the resolve of these Sky Dwellers was strong, thanks in no small part to the Captain's inspiration. These mortals didn't need my meddling. The future of Zeka Grande was in good hands.
Unfortunately, I have another bit of news to share. In fact, I was hoping I could count on your help for just a bit longer.
Roland's smile vanished, and a steely gaze took its place.
A scouting team from Seed Hollow filed several reports about a strange phenomenon they experienced while investigating the Pillar of Vayoi. They claimed to have heard a voice, but not just any voice.
My body suddenly went numb with apprehension. It was as if I had returned to the research lab, reliving the moment when I heard Lucilius call me a spare.
It was Lilith's.
No one moved. No one dared to breathe. If I hadn't known better, I would have sworn time itself had stopped.
That's impossible. She can't be alive. Not after what we...
The astral named Lilith should be long at the bottom of the skies, or so I was told. How could she have survived? We fly, now. The Grand Cipher lifted off with a complement of stupefied passengers. As we pulled away from Fondum's blood-red skies, the clouds seemed to part into a sneering grin. We raced to the top of the tower as fast as our legs could carry us, though none of us heard even a whisper of Lilith's voice. It was entirely possible, perhaps even preferable, that the scouting team had merely imagined the voice. Our vigilant eyes spotted nothing out of the ordinary, at least not in the physical sense, but something was there. I could feel it. It finally dawned on me. The trickles of dissonance I had felt on each of the 4 islands we visited were congregating at this location.
Did you sense something, Sandalphon?
As a matter of fact, I noticed a faint disturbance on the other islands, as if something somewhere was siphoning off energy.
That doesn't sound good.
According to Roland and the Captain, the phenomenon I described was strikingly similar to the way Lilith raised Vayoi. Vayoi was an amalgamation of debris and primal crystals absorbed from across Zeka Grande. Why was history repeating itself?
Now that you mention it, I think I sense Angra Mainyu. Its projected body disappeared when Lilith fused with it, but maybe its real one is still out there.
You mean to suggest we defeated a mere spare of Angra Mainyu?
A mere spare. Even if it wasn't the Primal's true form, I could not believe Lilith would risk such a fusion. Taking in a primal core was no simple matter, and in the worst cases, it meant a permanent transfiguration, astral or not. However, Lilith had reverted to her original form after the battle, lending further credence to the fact that the crew had only fought a duplicate.
Let's assume that Angra Mainyu's real body survived without a scratch. It won't take action without commands. Someone must be pulling its strings, ordering it to absorb primal crystals. But there's only one person who would want that.
Right on cue, a spine-chilling voice cut through the very air itself.
Place the crystals upon Vayoi's altar. Open the gate beyond the stars.
That was Mother.
And yet, the Dark Prophetess was nowhere to be found. With her disembodied voice still ringing in our ears, we drew our weapons, ready to battle with an enemy we couldn't see.
Angra Mainyu, O door to worlds beyond, claim this offering.
Her voice is coming from another dimension. So she is alive.
A rematch with an astral thought dead was the farthest thing from anyone's mind.
Id, I know this must be painful for you, but we must cross into the alternate dimension and destroy Lilith and Angra Mainyu once and for all.
I know. Don't worry about me.
You make it sound like opening a dimensional gate is as easy as turning a doorknob.
My good dragon, don't you remember this little beauty?
Roland proudly held up a transceiver. He boasted that it was capable of tracing where the energy signature was at its strongest. And Angra Mainyu would be lurking at the convergence point of the streams of dissonance. As soon as Roland flipped a switch on the transceiver, the sword of Eos in the captain's hand began to emit a radiant glow.
After you, Captain. Roger that.
The captain followed the signal, and with a weighty swing of their sword, a crack appeared in the air above the ground. The cut, however, was still too shallow. Allow me. I focused the power of the Primarchs into the crack etched by the captain. With a shrill crash, the gate to another dimension shattered open.
Fell the interlopers. Guide them to oblivion.
Lilith's voice rang crystal clear from within the rift. She was waiting on the other side of the threshold.
Follow me!
Roland took charge and leapt into the gaping fissure. We were right behind him. Come hell or high water, we were putting an end to this astral's incessant machinations.
I hear Lilith, but she's nowhere to be found.
We can leave her be for now. Focus on the colossal primal in front of us. The power grows.
Over here!
Excellent execution!
No escape!
Keep it up!
Show us test. Stop hiding!
Now I see what this is all about. Lilith left behind a reverberation hex.
No way out. What does that mean?
It means this poor beast is still bound to follow its master's orders. Now she's long.
Catch!
Not bad.
Giant hand! On the double!
Way ahead of you. No escape!
Almost there. Just a little bit
Come
more.
on. Right. Rest in peace.
Farewell, Lilith. It's finally over.
Sublime work, everyone. Once we had pacified Angra Mainyu, Roland began the rites to seal it away.
You're free now, Angra Mainyu. You won't be used for evil anymore. You can finally sleep peacefully.
It wasn't quite a eulogy, but hopefully it was enough of a goodbye. As the rift drew to a close, Angra Mainyu pulsed with light, a final sigh of relief as it was released from its torment.
As I'm sure you've all surmised, Lilith was never here to begin with. We were listening to an echo that she left behind using magic.
Then she's really gone. That's some comfort, at least.
I'm sorry, Id.
Sleep well, Angra Mainyu. May you never be exploited for nefarious acts ever again.
Well, I'm glad we put that matter to rest. Now that Vayoi has lost its power source, I dare say it'll crumble and fall to the bottom of the skies.
It would not be in the Sky Realm's best interest to allow this massive structure to crash into the Crimson Horizon. I envisioned what would happen if Pandemonium or Etemenanki crashed into the Crimson Horizon. All scenarios resulted in cataclysmic repercussions.
Not to worry. Just as Vayoi was assembled from assorted items across Sega Grande, so too should it dissolve into myriad vestiges before making a descent. Though I do feel sorry for the otherworlders residing in the Crimson Horizon. They won't be too thrilled when our trash rains down on them.
That would require an apology. Perhaps I should bring confections when the opportunity availed itself. That is, assuming the denizens of the otherworld were willing to sit down over a cup of coffee. As opposed to tearing me to shreds, of course.
Come to view the requests?
In the wake of our element-stabilizing endeavors, I flew high into Sega Grande's atmosphere to better evaluate the elemental health of the Skydom. Recovery was slow, but it was progressing in the right direction. If Skydwellers and primal beasts could return to living in harmony with one another, the elements should no doubt re-establish equilibrium. I visited the islands again to see how the people were faring. Blessed by the warm sun, smiles were abloom in the townships of the Einstedo archipelago. Meanwhile, the monks of Melos were still busy mopping up the flood that swept through the ravines of Lotania. A contingent of workers led by the family Zathba had unearthed a fair section of Dali's ruins. Several small encampments had already sprung up to capitalize on potential profits. Flights to Fondom from Folka and Seed Hollow had begun service. Construction on the observatory was coming along nicely as well. Come laughter, tears, or pain, Skydwellers persevere. They learn to grow and evolve. They possess unlimited potential to overcome any manner of hardship that stands in their way. I witnessed that firsthand from my travels with the captain and crew. As the Supreme Primarch, it was my duty to watch over the people from high above. But maybe I was destined for another purpose. Skydwellers are strong. A time will come when they no longer need the aid of archangels, or any other such being. And as we fade in importance, we will be forgotten. Did he continue to advance Skydweller evolution, knowing full well it may lead to the end of his purpose? The ability to forget is a double-edged sword. The fear of being forgotten by someone important to you is unimaginably terrifying. When the primals of Sega Grande no longer had a role to play, they began to disappear from everyone's lives. What if these primals had influenced the elements in a bid to affirm their own existence? A final, desperate cry to the world, announcing they were still here. Before me, the sky stretched out under a blinding sun, blue as far as the eye could see. The world's cruelty wrenched my heart. Lucifer once wondered what makes the sky blue. I guess I have a question of my own for the skies. Would mortals and primals ever stop fighting? Could we ever live in harmony? Oh, am I a bit early? The portrait we posed for on the docks of Folka was complete, so I had plans to meet the others at the church to collect it. However, its humble halls were empty. It would seem my fellow crewmates were comfortable with being fashionably late. Don't get the wrong idea. I have absolutely no interest in vanity. I was, however, curious which colors the artist had selected to paint the sky. Once I'd confirmed this detail, I would be on my way. But it was quiet in the church, somber, you could say. Coffee would go well with this atmosphere. What I wouldn't give for just one cup, though I wasn't sure we could afford the detour for such a simple luxury. They're late. I'd grown used to waiting on mortals. There was nothing to do except figure out the best way to pass the time. I could reanalyze our previous battle with Angra Mainyu, or I could also...
Sleepyhead!
Was someone calling me?
Rise and shine, Sleepyhead!
I was still groggy coming out of my accidental nap, but my ears were in working order. A cacophony of voices made sure of that.
Heard you're a coffee fiend, so I brought you my famous Zothba blend. Stuff will knock your socks off.
You failed to mention it was brewed with natural water melted from the purest snow of Lotania. I dare you to find a fresher source.
Sandalphon, my boy, how do you feel about sponge cake?
Try some of Seed Hollow's finest flower wine. Go on, take a swig straight from the bottle.
All right. Let the poor guy get his bearings, everyone. He did just wake up.
Somebody's popular.
What had I done to deserve this? Think, Sandalphon. First you came to the church to receive a painting, and then...
You had no idea so many people wanted to come thank you, right? No wonder you're surprised.
I did not think I had done anything to warrant such an outpouring of gratitude. The children of man fuss over everything.
Look at it this way. If it weren't for you, we never would have noticed all the weirdness in the skies. You rock, dude!
As I fumbled for an excuse to escape the throng of well-wishers, Sierra Carte entered the church.
My goodness. We have ourselves quite the turnout here.
Turnout? What was this, a party?
And now, for the moment you've been waiting for. Voila!
The merchant presented me with a board wrapped in cloth. I gingerly removed it, only to be met with the shock of a lifetime. Lucifer? No. I felt as if my eyes were betraying me.
Huh. That wasn't exactly the reaction I was expecting.
Lyria and Vern peered over my shoulder.
Wow, you look so handsome, Sandalphon!
My identity as the Supreme Primarch had never been revealed to the artist, yet her intuitive eye still captured my hidden essence.
If you want, I could arrange for a replacement. No questions asked. Customer satisfaction is my #1 priority.
No, that won't be necessary. I'll take it. The pure arrogance of mistaking myself for Lucifer. I must have been drowsier than I let on. Yet somehow, It felt right. Regardless, I still had one outstanding issue with the portrait. Where would I hang it up?
Mother said she would bring us salvation. It was a glorious message, and for that she gained a devoted following. As for me, how could I doubt the woman who pulled me from the fiery wreck, who raised me as her own? I thought that together we would save the Sky Realm, even if it meant cutting down any who opposed us. But over time, the sacrifices began to mount. I struggled. My reason battled with my heart, which battled with my conscience. Mother was pure and righteous, but to sacrifice the entire Sky Realm... No. She just lost her way for a bit. She'd wake up one day and see she had strayed. As her child, as her defender, I wanted to believe that she'd change for me. Even at the very end, when I was forced to turn my sword on her, I was praying for an alternative. Any alternative. But she would not repent. And I was confronted with the full force of the atrocities I'd committed in Avia's name. But there was one light left to guide me.
Just follow your heart. It might lead you to scary places, but at least you'll know you're being true to yourself.
Thank you, Lyria. If you hadn't reminded me of my own strength, I'd still be in the dark following Lilith. I swear to you that I will fix even more than I destroyed. And one day, perhaps I will be worthy of your forgiveness. "15 years ago, Dali fell prey to a violent catastrophe. One that still lives etched in my mind. There was an explosion. Immense and sudden. My home went up in flames, and with it the only life I had ever known. People were fleeing and dying in all directions. The air was filled with screams and the smell of burning. Then I heard it. The soul-piercing roar of a dragon. My short life should have come to an end that day. Except...
Shh. It's okay. Let me be the one to save you.
Salvation came in the form of a kind woman. Her name was Lilith, prophet of the pilgrims of Avia. From that day forth, she was both my mother and mentor. I worshipped her. And the thing about devotion is, it makes you blind. Mother had followers in the hundreds, thousands, and my simple child's mind thought, well, if this many people have faith in her, she has to be good, right? I wanted desperately to be of use to her. So I trained the perfect guardian.
Young Id, one day you shall be as mighty as I!
General Galanza taught me how to fight.
You wouldn't want the other pilgrims saying you're riding your mother's coattails, would you? Then you must prove yourself.
General Magliel taught me why we fight. Her training was harsh, but that's how I acquired the makings of a general. All effort, no nepotism. Finally, I had some value to Mother. Her sharpest sword. I never felt happier or more accomplished. I thought we were going to save the Sky Realm. The naivete of it all. After we captured the Shaman of Salvation for Lilith's cause, I was assigned to be the girl's keeper. That made me enemy number one to the Grand Cypher's crew. Every time I took Lyria to a primal beast altar, they'd be there, and we'd fight. I mean, there was a time or two we had to cooperate to prevent widespread calamity. That's beside the point. They were standing in the way of Lilith's mission, opening the path to the Promised Land, Astalucia, and bringing salvation to all Sky Dwellers. Salvation. It's a powerful word in a messed up world like ours. No wonder everyone got roped in by her lies. Lilith was no more than an astral desperate to return to her home dimension, and she would have sacrificed the whole Sky Realm to do it. I tried to reason with her. Might as well have asked an avalanche to change course. So I turned to prayer. But what are hopes and belief without action? So left with no other choice, I joined the crew of the Grand Cypher to dispatch my own mother. But I never could have foreseen what would happen next. Lilith did something, and freed a monster from within me. The dragon I'd seen the day Dolly burned, with wings so vast they overshadowed all of Sega Grande. Bahamut Versa. But then I learned, Bahamut didn't cause the Dolly calamity. It had come to stop it. It was Lilith who killed my family and razed my home. She'd only let me live for one reason. She needed a vessel to seal the dragon in, and I was conveniently nearby. She'd raised me to win my loyalty and protect herself from the god of destruction now living inside me. But when I stopped being of use to her, she abandoned me and let me turn into Bahamut. I don't know how to describe the feeling of flesh melting into scales, of fire filling your stomach. All human warmth, human blood seemed to rush from my veins, and it was replaced by an overwhelming urge to destroy. It was like being swept away in a torrent. Any attempt to fight it only made the suffering worse. I was so tempted to give in. But the crew wouldn't let me. Apparently, the captain was sure I wouldn't lose my soul battle with Bahamut. So to help me along, they decided to beat on the dragon from the outside until he coughed me up. Yeah, not the most elaborate plan. But it worked. The whole time they were fighting, they called my name, and the sound of their voices brought me back. I split myself from Bahamut, then joined the crew to take it down. We had our losses, though. Bahamut hit me and the captain with a blow that sent us hurtling into another dimension. A man named Roland dove in to save us, sacrificing himself along the way. And that's how we came back to Folca without him. Roland used to be the local Mr. Fix-It, by the way. And I took up that mantle. I owed him that much, and I figured it'd be a first step in making amends. And that's where this new chapter in my life begins. Me, as the new Mr. Fix-It. After clearing up some requests, I thought I'd earn some, I don't know, respect, honor, from the Crew Alliance Rafale. But it seems you can't buy forgiveness so easily.
Ahem. So I believe we're all aware of Avia's assault on Seed Hollow.
She looked straight at me as she spoke. The actions of the pilgrims, myself included, had left a number of locals without homes. There was a plan to resettle volunteers in Tempio. Give them a fresh start.
They're going to be out in the open, moving, building. This includes children and the elderly. Your job would be to protect the settlers until their homes are up. Trustworthy Skyfarers only.
Hey, don't push yourself. You can sit this one out, you know.
Rackham lay a hand on my shoulder, but I shook my head at him. We take it. This is right. I couldn't stay stuck in the past forever. I needed to move on. I needed to help those I hurt move on. It wasn't an easy choice, though. Our patron, the family who was bankrolling this mission, didn't know I'd worked for Avia. And I didn't know if I had the guts to tell them. Yeah, I know. How am I supposed to atone for crimes I'm too scared to admit? Still, one step at a time. Too much of a coward to take responsibility? Fine. I could at least start by repairing some of the damage I'd done. I'd make sure the settlers built in peace. And if one of them happened to find out about my past, then that would be that. I'd accept whatever punishment they saw fit to give me. It didn't matter where I hid or how far I ran. Retribution would find me eventually.
You need my aid?
The ride to Tempeal was uneventful. The proposed relocation site was set near an old storehouse by the river. There was water here, and the building could be repurposed for homes. The migrants dragged their feet and often looked back towards Seed Hollow. Most had been born and raised there. We'd been hired as bodyguards, but for the time being at least, all was quiet. Just the sound of wind and running water. Patrols didn't take long, and only 1 or 2 people had to go at a time. The rest of us found other ways to keep busy. Carrying supplies, repairing the storehouse, prepping materials, cooking. Whatever needed doing, we did it. While the adults were building the new body of the village, the children, they were forming the new heart of it. It's amazing how kids can find happiness in just about anything. The world's fresh and new to them, Down by the river, they discovered unfamiliar plants and bugs with funny shapes. In the old storehouse, they looked for hidden treasure and lost stories. Sure, sometimes they got in the way of work and were scolded, but you could tell the adults appreciated having the kids around. It gave them hope. Io and Lyria were their self-appointed babysitters. They called it serious work, but it looked like fun and games to me. Those kids didn't have a care in the world. Well, all except one of them. There was a girl who would always glance my way, pretty much from day one of this job. I say girl, but she was a Harvan, so her age was hard to pinpoint. But she played with the kids more than she worked, so I assumed. Anyways, turned out she was a teenager. That would explain the looks she gave me. I don't think any kid could have been filled with such fear, such anger, such hate. Didn't take much to guess why she had a grudge against me. But she made sure I knew. It happened one day when I was on my way to the storehouse to stack some freight. She was in my path, and since I had a load of boxes in my arms, I almost bowled her over.
Don't come closer!
Her voice was loud and shrill. I won't hurt you. I promise.
Yeah, right. Everyone else might have forgotten you, but I haven't. We're here because of you.
Her name was Shiralu, 14 years old. Parents volunteered to come on this resettlement mission after they had lost their livelihoods back in Seed Hollow. She had reason to hate me. During this whole exchange, I felt strangely relieved. No more waiting in the shadows, trying to work up the courage to atone. Atonement had come for me.
Why are you here? To take our new homes?
Never. I only wished I were better with words. To convey even a fraction of the guilt I felt. To give her even the slightest comfort. Not a day goes by where I don't regret what I've done. I wanted to tell her I was ready to repent, but my voice came out flat, insincere.
I don't believe that for a second! You're a liar! A liar and...
But she was cut off by warning bells. I raced back to the settlement center, where I found Rackham.
Goblin sighting! Get everyone inside the gates, pronto!
His voice rose up over the cacophony.
An attack! But my father just left for the storehouse!
Remain here. I'll find him. I left without waiting for a response.
Come on! Just like we practiced! Into the gates!
We'll handle the goblins.
Everyone's safe.
Should be. Why we're here, isn't it? Now come on, we got goblin tail to kick.
There's more here! They're trying the pincer maneuver. Vern, you watch over the settlers.
Got it! Leave it to me!
Clip the cover!
There's so many. Where'd they all come from?
Heard this place used to be Monster Central. Guess these are the stragglers.
Bad news, guys! Some girl named Shiralu has gone missing! No! What did she...
Don't assume anything, Lyria. First, we secure the area, then we start a search.
Shiralu? Wasn't that the Harvan girl?
Id, do you know something?
Great, we'll get the search party started. Right after these messages.
No escape!
Let's try to hit you from far away!
Stay down.
Hey! I heard Shiralu's near the windmill!
Yeah, sounds about right. She was worried about her dad.
Then what are we waiting for? Let's go! hand over here.
What? Shirolu, where did you go?
Focus on the fight at hand. Here they come! Strike true! Unbound! Got you now! Fall!
Is someone there? Shirolu!
Don't worry, we're here to help. Do you think you can stay hidden for a bit?
Yeah, I can do that. Thank you.
There's more? Out of my way!
Wait, I recognize that voice.
Back off! Tell me again!
Looks like we're all clear. You can come out now, Shirolu.
It was a close call, but we managed to find Shirolu in time.
Everything's going to be okay now. Thank you.
Lyria ran over to the girl. I don't think Shirolu was in. It had to have been me. The reason she looked so pained. If I hadn't forced her from her home, she wouldn't have almost lost her life. I turned and walked a few steps. I'll secure the way back. Bring her when she feels better.
Wait, Id.
Shirolu needed good people around her. What did I ever bring but suffering?
Hello there.
The day after the goblin attack, I had an unlikely visitor. Shirolu.
You didn't have to save me, but thank you.
That took me completely off guard. I searched wildly in my mind for a response, but all that came out was... I was just trying to do the right thing.
Look, Avia almost destroyed Seed Hollow, and I won't ever forgive you for that. Do you know how many people were hurt?
I'm sorry. Like I said, words, not my strong point. Is there any way I can make amends? I will do anything. She looked at me for a moment. Her lips working, searching for an answer. Her eyes slowly welled up with tears.
Can you bring back the dead? I didn't think so.
If I could trade my life for even one I'd taken, I'd have done it in a heartbeat. But she was right. Those people were gone, and never coming back.
We can't talk about this now. Maybe I shouldn't have come. Have a good... goodbye.
She turned and walked away. Her voice shook the entire time we were talking. With anger, I guessed. And grief. But she'd still forced herself to thank me. It hit me then how kind she was. If Avia had never existed, she might have never known the corrosive influence of hate. Our crimes went beyond the people we killed. Even those that survived, they now had to live with the trauma and sleepless nights. It was all so heavy. I was beginning to see that I'd never be able to atone. Not if I had 100,000 years and all the power in the skies. We now knew the settlement was a prime target for goblins. We'd cleared out a band of them, but there would always be more. We decided to tighten our defenses. More frequent patrols with bigger teams. I was quick to volunteer for the first shift. Lyria, Vern, and the captain came along.
Hey, we noticed things are kind of tense between you and Shiralu. Do you want to talk about it?
Lyria kept pace beside me, peering up into my face. What's there to say? My past was for me to solve. I didn't need to make the crew part of my guilt.
She knew, didn't she, that you were once part of Avia?
All right, fine. Who was I kidding? No one kept secrets with these three around. Someone was going to find out eventually. Just don't worry about it. But Vern and Lyria pushed back.
We're buds now, right? Your problems are my problems. Exactly. We can talk to Shiralu together. This is your chance to make things right.
You know, sometimes when you feel lost in a hostile world, that's all it takes to put things into perspective. A few kind words. Okay. But there's no half-assing it. Whatever Shiralu asks, we give it to her. Do you understand? I was offered no answer, but their eyes told me enough. Sins are only burned away through atonement. This was the way things had to be. We walked for a while in silence, until finally the captain nodded. And I was told the crew would do what was right. Days passed, and the demeanor of the settlers when they were around me began to change. Bright eyes turned into cold stares. Open hands clenched into fists, smiles morphed into sneers. They had begun avoiding me, too. It was easy enough to guess why. On an afternoon, buried under gray clouds, the rest of the crew gathered around me in a show of solidarity. I'd recommend keeping your distance. I'm a known criminal now. I stared ahead of me into empty space. Maybe Shiralu had told the others about me. Maybe she hadn't. What did it matter? The truth was bound to come out eventually. This was justice.
But Id, you didn't hurt anyone because you wanted to. You were being controlled.
The captain knelt beside me and pointed out excuses I'd rehearsed in my mind 1,000,000 times before. And as a child, I couldn't have known the difference between right and wrong. That as an adult, I was blinded by my love for Lilith. That in choosing to turn against my family for the sake of the skies, I had sacrificed the most. Yeah, I had misguided intentions. So what? If that were a real defense, we wouldn't have any villains, would we? I deserve to be judged for my actions, and my actions alone. They all fell silent after that.
My hour has come.
the skies and her people.
Shiraloo found me during one of my patrols. She stood in front of me, fidgeting with the cloth of her skirt.
I'm sorry. I only told one person and then somehow everyone found out.
With all due respect, so accusing when what I really meant is...
Just tell me one thing. Did the church really brainwash you? And did you really...
Did she need to know? Would my good intentions bring back the dead? Shiraloo knew the answer to that as well as I did. My past is no excuse.
So it is true. You're a victim. Just like us.
No. I was the perpetrator. I had to be the perpetrator. How else could I explain the guilt that sat on my chest? It made it hard to breathe. But before I... No. Shiraloo, find your family and get to safety.
Okay, I won't leave the village this time.
Good. I met up with the others, and we left for battle.
Oh, thank goodness you're here! If we lose these supplies, we lose the village! You have to help us!
No problemo. Goblin Hunter's my middle name.
Less talking, more fighting! Wow!
Reinforcements. To think they still had hordes in reserve.
This looks bad! More goblins are headed for the village!
What? Now? We can't abandon the supplies.
I'll go back. Can you handle things here?
Sure can. Just worried about getting to the village in time, hero boy.
All right, Ed, let's roll! Come on, bud. We're almost there.
Okay.
What the? They've overrun the place!
There's less than I thought. Perfect.
Where are those Skyfarers? I'm so scared.
Someone's here. It's Id.
Stay inside. Don't come out until I say so.
You're planning to fight them alone?
Janelle!
You've never seen Id when he's serious. He'll be fine. What's being happened to us?
All I wanted was to protect people. I know I've made mistakes in the past, but I have changed. And I'll prove it.
He's facing all those monsters. For us.
But if it weren't for him, we wouldn't be in this situation.
I know that Avia robbed us of our old homes. But right now, it's fighting to protect our new ones.
There's still more of them.
Oh, crap! Now I'm getting worried.
No, Vern. I can do this.
Id.
No! More goblins are coming!
Don't give in, Id!
Why are you cheering him on?
Listen to me. Id might have done some terrible things in the past, but look at the person he's out there right now. He's risking everything to save us. Is that what a villain does? I'll never forgive the Church of Avia, but Id's no longer one of them.
He helped build this village, and now he's respected. That means he's become one of us.
I believe in him. He's our last hope. Please, Id, pull through! We're counting on you!
To protect them, I have to!
Whoa, that's insane! He powered up!
I've seen too many homes burned in my life. I won't let it happen here!
You can do it, Id!
Cheering for you, Id! Show those monsters who's boss! Die!
That thing is huge! Please win this!
All I need is 90 seconds!
I still can't believe he's out there. All alone.
Come on, Id! You got this! Thank you, Id.
Pack it up. My sword cut clean through the last goblin. It's over. As I pulled my blade clear of its flesh, it trailed an arc of blood through the air. I felt the settlers behind me, watching, judging. You see, I thought, this is the kind of monster I am.
I can't believe it! You did it, Ed! You really did it!
Shirley broke the silence with a cheer. For me, I had to say something. The goblins are gone. All at once, the migrants rushed me. Hands took hold of me and lifted me into the air.
Those were fearsome odds, but you pulled through!
You saved us. Thank you, Id.
These people knew I had destroyed their homes. So why were they rallying to me?
Sorry I'm late. What'd I miss?
The crew was now filing back into the village. They gazed up at me open-mouthed. I'm sure I looked back at them with pretty much the same expression.
Oh, nothing. Just Id single-handedly annihilating a goblin army.
The settlers finally put me down and began telling exaggerated accounts of the battle. I tried to take the opportunity to slink off and find conversation with something more my level. Maybe a tree or something.
Hey, just where do you think you're sneaking? Is our resident bad boy feeling shy?
I shot Rackham my nastiest look, but only because he had guessed the truth.
You should be proud, Id. You saved everyone here.
Come on, Lyria. It had to be obvious that I wanted to be left to myself. Truth was, I didn't think I deserved all this praise. So I saved a small settlement. Great. Guess we'd forgotten I've also raised entire cities. The captain strolled up to me and, after elbowing me in the ribs, asked, how was it to fight for the good guys? That, I had an easy answer to. Not bad, I said. Not bad at all.
Yeah?
Yes, can I help you?
The morning after the second goblin strike, the sun rose on a quiet scene. The river glinted gold. The grass stirred in the breeze. The migrants came with our breakfast and a peace offering.
Avia attacked our homeland. We'll never forget that pain. But you proved yourself a true ally yesterday.
Everyone saw you risk your life for us. You've earned our trust.
They seemed to be leading up to something, so I asked with my usual eloquence. And...
Well, if it's all right with you, we'd like you to stay and protect our fledgling village.
I could not believe my ears. No. I'm not the person for the job. I've committed atrocities.
Ed.
Lyria's voice sounded from behind me. I turned to see her smiling. You're right. She hadn't said anything, but I got the message. I had spent these past few weeks looking for punishment, hoping it would somehow numb my guilt. But how was my pain supposed to help anyone? I had become the new Mr. Fix-It. I was going to dedicate my life to helping more people than I hurt. That was the best. The only way to atone.
What's wrong, Id? You look like you've gone into brooding overdrive.
What? No, I'm happy.
Buddy, you ever heard of a smile?
At this, the crowd laughed. I raised the corner of my lips, as if testing them. This made the crowd laugh harder.
Sorry to interrupt, but could I have a word?
It was one of the soldiers from the supply force.
As some of you may already know, we weren't only responsible for transporting supplies, we were also tasked with assessing the resettlement effort. And I think it's no stretch to say the local monster presence is deadly. I'll have to ask the higher-ups to consider relocating.
Shiraloo answered before I could.
Not a problem. We've got a beast-slaying Mr. Fix-It on our side.
As the local Mr. Fix-It, I've had a finger in every pie. From furniture repair to monster extermination to marriage counseling, I've seen it all. Though I admit the counseling did not come naturally to me. Still, I wanted to help in any way I could. I owed the skies that much. A new request came in today. From an old friend.
Sid, was it my imagination, or did I see you crack a smile?
Lyria materialized at my shoulder and tried to read the forms in my hand. Yeah, work's been nice. I handed her the papers. And there, written in plain view, was the name of our latest patron. Shiraloo.
Have a nice day. Please.
Till next time. Thank you.